Everyone, it's Patty here, and I'm kind of getting in the Halloween spirit. Now, I'm going to confess, it's not my favorite time of year as far as my own house is concerned. I'm kind of like the minimalist, decorator. But when it comes to art projects for kids, oh my goodness, there's just so many cute things you can do. Now, one of the lessons that I absolutely loved and did every year with my kindergartners was this little funny face pumpkin. And maybe a lot of you have done this pumpkin as well. Now, I want to show you today that there are really super simple steps to drawing this actual pumpkin. And I have this handout for you that you can download, and I'll include the link after I finish this live video. I'll just go back and edit and put the link in so that you can download this little handout. And I'm going to show you how to draw this pumpkin, and even little kids as young as 3 or even 4, actually I should say definitely 4, but maybe 3 if they have a little bit of parental help. But definitely your kindergartners and your transitional kindergartners can certainly do this. It's really just a series of lines and shapes. And I'll show you how to put it all together, and then some variations, which I think is the key, because any teacher, even if you have no art experience at all, anyone can do this. And I'll show you how to kind of up-level the project for older kids, because there are some really kind of cool things that you can do with just one simple set of instructions. You can transform your classroom, and you can really have a lot of fun in the process and learn a lot about art for the kids. Now, if we have time, I have this project that I want to show you. Where is it? Here it is. Now, this project I never actually did in my classroom, but I put it on the blog about a year ago, and it was a watercolor contour cat. But then what I've done is kind of switched it up a little bit, and you can see that we're using painted paper, and I'm going to show you how to draw this little contour cat. Isn't he cute? He has little pom-poms on it. I just love that little added touch. It kind of brings them all to life, makes them kind of fancy. So I'm going to show you how to draw this as well, and some variations, because here's the thing. When you figure out just the basic structure of a guided drawing, and you may or may not like guided drawings, but I tell you, they're super helpful because they provide a base, a platform, and then you can start building your art project repertoire just from that one little simple line drawing. So I am going to get started, and if you have any questions, go ahead and ask me, or if you like a part of the project, or if you want to repeat anything, just let me know. You can tap the hearts, or send me any kind of questions you want. And even if you're watching this later on, I'll put it on my Deep Space Sparkle page. You can still ask questions, and I'll come back and answer them, so no problem there. Okay, so this little handout is going to be in my blog, so I'll give you the link to this handout. But basically, it's like a step-by-step guide on how to draw this pumpkin, and I'll show you how to do that. So this would be, I always used a whiteboard in my classroom. A lot of teachers use smartboards, but there's nothing like actually having the kids in front of you, drawing kind of at their level, and getting them involved in the process with them up close and personal. There's really nothing that can compare to that. Sometimes logistically it's a little bit tough, but if you can swing it, have the kids kind of sit around at your feet and have them look up at the whiteboard, because this is all there is to it. So if you have a piece of paper, most likely it's like a 12 by 18 paper, and they might be using a paper similar to this. Now this is 12-inch by 18-inch sulfite paper. Now don't let the name kind of scare you off. It's basically just a construction paper, but it's different than the craft store construction paper. This is nice and smooth. It's a drawing paper. So it's really nice for art rooms, and you probably are using it even if you don't know what the real name is. So you want to position it horizontally, okay? Then how the kids do this: draw a dot at the top and draw a dot at the bottom. And you can do this and kind of practice it. It's just super simple. Then, after they draw the dot, connect it with a line. Well, really little kids are going to draw a really wobbly line. The wobblier, the better. Believe me, it doesn't have to be straight. It shouldn't be straight. Then do this. Take your oil pastel, your crayon, whatever you're going to be working with, and draw a big fat belly from this line to this line, or this dot to that dot. Then do the same on the other side. And some kids are going to draw a really big curved line, and some kids are going to draw a really narrow curved line. So if the line is super narrow, still fine. What it's imitating are the ribs of the pumpkin. So take your oil pastel or your crayon and put it on top of the dot and make an even bigger belly and join it up at the bottom dot. Now go to the other side and do the very same thing, just like that. And then have them keep on doing that until they get the size of pumpkin that they want. So I'm going to do it one more time. And when the lines are wobbly, it looks actually more realistic than if they were perfectly straight lines. So you don't have to make or strive for a perfectly straight line. And then just do the same on the other side. What happens is that when you do this, the lines do get wobbly, but what happens is that they get a contour line, and that's what we're going to cut out. So if I was to do it on this paper, let's see if I have a magnet. I do. Okay. So my magnet would be there, and let me see. Here is, I really like black oil pastels. I find that they're just so, I don't know, versatile, and for little hands, they draw really big shapes with the oil pastel. So this is what I would recommend. And they're almost better than crayons, because crayons you have to have a lot of pressure really to get a dark line, whereas an oil pastel, they're a little bit waxier, a little softer, they're going to break more often, but they get a darker line, and it's more satisfying to have a darker line than a really light line. So all you have to do is do the dots again and keep on making the bellies of the pumpkin, just like that. And then what kids are going to want to do is add a stem. So make sure you leave a little bit of room at the very top. So I have some painted paper here. Now, if you don't know what painted paper is, it's basically the sulfite paper that I just showed you. But on one side, it's covered with paint. And I have a lot of tutorials and a lot of lessons on Deep Space Sparkle that kind of show you how to do this. But basically, it's just tempera paint over top of either white paper or colored paper. So kids have a choice. They can draw, and actually you as the teacher have a bigger choice. If you have just orange paper in your classroom and you want to use the orange paper, draw the pumpkin on the orange paper. But if you want to have a little bit more fun, and let me see, you can see that this one, it has the, just the plain orange paper. But if you want to have a little bit more fun, you can use painted paper. And it kind of comes out a little bit more textured and a little bit more color and more interest. So it's kind of up to you. So then all you do, let's see, I'm pretty sure I have some scissors here. Yeah, here we go. So go ahead and just cut it out. And, you know, cutting is really, really good for little kids. Oh my gosh. I've had some second grade classes that the kids didn't even know how to cut a straight line. Like, they really struggled with the cutting part. So it's never too early to start children learning how to hold a pair of scissors, kind of getting their little fingers in the little the handles. It's never too young. So if you are at home working with your 3-year-old or 4-year-old, give them scissors. I had one little boy who told me that I shouldn't be using scissors in school because they were dangerous tools. I should never forget that. He was so cute. Okay, so now that you have your pumpkin cut out, you want to have on hand and give each child a strip of white paper. Remember what I said about the sulfite paper? Well, this is pretty much the same thing, except a big 12-inch by 18-inch piece of paper, and you can cut it down into strips like this. And I say that's about 2.5 inches, but you don't have to measure it, just eyeball it. Each kid should get a strip about that big. And now the black paper, a little bit bigger. Again, this is just the sulfite paper. This is 12 inches and I cut it into 3. And this is what we're going to be making the mouth out of. So the next part, I like to do the mouth first because I think it's the most fun. You want to basically fold the paper in half. Now, for little kids, 3 and 4, this is going to be very challenging. So you might want to draw the mouth for the kids. But for kindergartners, they can definitely do this. And first graders, absolutely. The idea is that you're going to fold the paper like a book. So the tricky part of this, it might not be obvious to you, but when you're teaching 30 kids, it's going to become very clear that there's one little caveat to this project, making the mouth. The goal is to create a symmetrical shape. And so that when we cut it out and open it up, we have a mouth that is the same basically on one side as the other. But what kids will do is that they might cut the open side. So here's the open side, and then here is the closed side. You want them to put their hands or their thumb over the folded part of the paper. Then they can cut the shape. Now for a kindergartner, you might want to have them draw the shape first, starting at the folded side and going out and making a kind of like a half of a mouth. But for older kids, you can just have them eyeball it. This is the fun part about art. You don't have to have it so planned that everyone has the exact same mouth. So all you have to do is really just cut and see what happens. And these little mouths, these are just so cute because everyone really gets like a different shaped mouth, and that's what you want. And so here's my mouth, and you can see that it's huge. It's a very big mouth, but that's okay. I'm going to put it here. And you know, some kids might say, that is too big, I don't want it so big. They can cut it down. I'll show you how you can do that actually. If you do have a child that says that they're not happy with their mouths, then you can just basically say, well, put your thumb back over the folded part and just cut another mouth. Like just basically make it smaller. And which is exactly what I did. And they may or may not like that better. Now for the eyes, I have a trick for you. If you don't have these little salsa cups, can you see these? They're little condiment cups. You can kind of save them if you're going to fast food restaurants. Oftentimes in California, cilantro or little chopped up onions come in this, or little salsa, which is why we call them like salsa containers. But you can get them at any kind of restaurant supply store, and they're very inexpensive, like 100 of them for like $3. But I use these for many, many things, to hold paint, but in this case we're going to use it to trace the eyes. So go ahead, and I don't know if you're like me, but I always misplace my oil pastel. Here it is. Okay, so all you do is just trace a line around the condiment cup. That easy. But here's the fun part. We're really working with symmetry today, so you want to fold that paper. So here's my tracing. Pretty simple. Now, if you wanted to, you could have the kids cut or trace and cut 2 circles. But instead, to kind of up the level a little bit, maybe for first graders, fold it over like this and then have them cut twice. And I often do this. I say to kids, why cut twice when you can cut once, right? So by folding the paper, you just have to cut once, and it goes all the way around, and you'll have two eyeballs. So I'm just going to put these here. And then while I have this up, they're going to be using the scrap paper as their teeth. So I'm just going to cut off this part. It's all falling to the floor. And when I was teaching in a classroom, when I was demonstrating anything in the classroom, I would always just cut things, and things would always fall to the floor, and we'd pick them up afterwards. So don't worry about making a mess. Now, you have this basically a rectangle, and kids can cut this however they want. What's going to happen, they're going to cut this into little rectangles or squares, and they're going to use them for their teeth. So I generally tell the kids, cut, 2 strips. And, maybe I want to have one set of teeth a little bit longer. Now, all you have to do, when you're over a table, it's going to be a little easier because all of the teeth will fall onto the table. And so I'm just going to cut a few, and I'm going to try to hold on to them so they don't all fall to the floor. And that should be good. Okay, so let's start gluing some things. Okay. So the first thing you want to tell the kids is to glue on the eyeballs. And they can put them wherever they want. And right here. And I'm going to put the pupil in just a minute. We're going to glue the mouth on next. If you don't start gluing these pieces down, they start to disappear. And I think that's the frustrating part, because then the kids have to do it again. So put the glue on. You can use glue stick is fine, but white school glue is often really good. I just happen to have this. It's a little easier to use. And then they just want to start, putting on the teeth. And this is really the fun part. You're going to have some kids who do some really creative things with the teeth. You might be a little bit surprised. So I'm just going to start sticking these on and kind of put them wherever they want. You can also mention to kids that it's helpful for the pumpkin to have teeth on the upper part of the mouth and the lower, so they can put some here. And just by the way of cutting them, the teeth will start to become a little bit crooked and long and pointed. Now, some kids are going to purposely point their scissors or their teeth and make really, well, you'll see. There's lots of things that they'll do. And I know, I think they're really cute. Okay, so maybe that's all the teeth this little guy has. Then, you just really want to take some more of the black paper and make the eyeballs. Now, whenever you can with kids, try to introduce the concept of folding paper and then cutting two shapes out of one cut. It really helps. The younger you can start them with the cutting and the folding of the paper, the more projects you can really do later on. You want to get them to do some circles. Before I cut this out, I actually should show you how. There's a really good trick I learned. I used to be a creative memories consultant a long time ago. And one trick that we learned was how to cut a photograph into a circle. Yeah, that was kind of a skill that we learned. And what I learned was this, and I don't know if you can really see me, but your cutting hand should be stable. And your elbow should be kind of close to your waist. And so this hand technically doesn't move. And you can show this to kids. But this hand does all the steering or the driving. So you start, and this paper is doubled up, and you start by cutting, and see how my arm is moving the paper? You keep on turning the paper, and for some reason, just having one arm move and then one arm stationary, you get two circles that are far more even than if the kids were kind of moving both arms. Just a little trick. Okay, so then, this is the fun part too, and this is when the kids really get to add personality to their pumpkins. And you can put the eyes or the pupils wherever you want. Maybe this one's looking over this way. He looks a little scared, and that's kind of good. Then the final thing is you can add little eyebrows and you add a nose. Now the nose is important. I'm looking for my paper here. And you can do a triangle nose, or you can do another type of nose. I had some kids really go to town with this project, and they did things like eyeglasses and mustaches and all sorts of different things. So I think I'll put this little nose right there, and he's all done. So now here's the variation. Here's the little pumpkin. This is, I tell you, when an adult does it, it's not that cute. I mean, they're like, oh, that's a really cute pumpkin. But you just wait until your 25 little kindergartners all create these little pumpkins. It's the most adorable thing you've ever seen. I mean, it's really just the cutest. And it just, I just want to go back and do it all over again. Anyways, when they do it, so cute, so cute. Okay. So I showed you how to do that funny face pumpkin. Now let me see if I can find my other one. Okay. On my blog, I have a project called Starlight Pumpkin. And what it is, it's a black piece of paper as the base. So instead of just cutting out the pumpkin and having it freestanding, you would actually take your pumpkin and put it on a piece of black paper. So I'm going to put mine here. And before you glue down, now this is a pumpkin. I think I just lost a leaf. Here we go. Before you basically draw the pumpkin in the very same manner, but you don't add any face to it. And this might be a project that is better for any type of teacher or someone in a school setting that you're not allowed to do Halloween projects, or your school does not celebrate or endorse Halloween, which happens more and more. A lot of schools don't do Halloween projects. So this Starlight Pumpkin project is a really good tie-in for fall and the harvest moon, and you can really teach a lot of art concepts with this. So basically, it's the same drawing. So I did this the very same way, and this is perfect for first and second grade. And I used the painted paper. See how it adds a lot more depth? And I'm going to show you one little trick in a few minutes that's even adds more depth and contrast. So before you put this little guy on, I'm just going to put him right here. You want to take a white oil pastel, and it dropped. I'll be back. Okay, that. So what you want to do with this is draw a harvest moon. This is white chalk. So you can see it's just a little tiny bitty piece of chalk. And you put that moon wherever you want. Whenever you're working with chalk, there's two ends. There's the pointy end and there's the flat end. For this one, if you want to use the flat end, having a really small piece of chalk helps so much. So don't be afraid of those tiny little pieces of chalk that you're going to end up with eventually. It's really good to have the small pieces. So basically just color it in. And yes, chalk pastel kicks up a lot of dust, and there's some brands that kick up a little bit less, but the inexpensive brands do kick up a lot of dust. But just get over it. It's not a big deal. Take one finger, and I have all the kids raise your finger painting finger, because you're not going to use your old hand, and you basically just go around and smooth out the moon, just like that. Then take the chalk, and you can add little stars, however you make stars. Make a little X, put a longer line through it, one little shorter cross. Just like that. Then you're going to take your pumpkin and just some glue, and put the pumpkin wherever you'd like. It could be over the moon or just beside it. Press it down. And then what I like to have kids do, if you're a fan of Deep Space Sparkle, you can see that there's a lot of painted paper projects that I have on the site, and that's because I just love for kids to create the painted paper, and then you can use it all year long for a multitude of projects. So you can see I made little, they're just leaf shapes, and using the oil pastel, you can see this one is painted paper with kind of like an oak leaf, and then just this one here. And I'll show you how to draw those in just a second. All you want to do is just glue these on kind of around the pumpkin. So you're introducing concepts like overlapping and perspective, because the leaves are in front of the pumpkin. And you can overlap the leaves, like stick this one underneath, so this one is in front and this one's in behind. And then if you want to, you can take some chalk pastel. I find that chalk pastel works really great on black paper. You can use oil pastel, you can use crayons, but they often don't show up really well on black paper, but chalk really does. So I'm going to use, just make some little vines. I'm using a light green, and you don't have to add anything here. You can add and color in more leaves if you want to. It's up to you. You can add a darker green. Now, here's the trick that I want to show you, and I hope you can see this really well. Yeah. For an older kid, like maybe in first grade or second grade, definitely third grade, you can take some white chalk. Now, white chalk on top of dried tempera paint, magic. All you have to do is take one side, and I'm going to take, see, the moon is on this side of the paper, so I'm going to add a little bit of white. Just here, and then take my finger, my one finger, remember that, and just blend it. And a lot of kids will go, well, they want to add a little white line to all of the ribs, because you know how a pumpkin has those bumpy ribs or ridges. And just kind of use the one finger, and then to add contrast, take a black, I know it's kind of scary, but go on the other side and just create some shadows. Maybe there's a shadow here on the stem. Maybe there's some shadows where the stem meets the pumpkin. Yeah, your fingers are going to get pretty darn messy. You can see that my fingers are pretty messy. And that's just what happens. So now I'm going to show it to you up close. This is the Starlight pumpkin. And it's just a really beautiful project for first graders to do. So what do you think? You like that? Yeah. I just love this project. And like I said, sometimes when an adult does a project, it looks good, but you know, we're adults. But when kids do it, oh, it transforms, because they have different ideas in their head, and they always add, you know, like an element that is kind of different and unexpected, and that's what you want to encourage, really. So those are two projects that you can do with that simple drawing handout that I'll link to after this video is over. So now I want to show you another project. So let me just kind of get things switched out. So I'm going to show you how to do this cat. And let's see. I'm going to scratch my nose, and then there's going to be black chalk all over it. I mean, how many times have you done that as a teacher? And then you go into the teacher's workroom or the lunchroom, and they don't say anything until, like, you go home at night, and then you have chalk all over your face, and no one says anything. So let me know. Okay. So here is, I have a handout. This is on my blog. It's called The Contour Cat. And I did it, you can see right here. I did it originally as a watercolor painting where you would draw, let me see if I have it here, yeah. You'd actually draw this little cute cat, and you can see how it's done, isn't it cute? You can see how it's done with a black Sharpie marker, and this is a watercolor paper. And then I tied a lot of art elements into this one, and it's just a black Sharpie. It's a drawing, but the black Sharpie won't block the watercolors, or the two watercolors coming together. So what I did is I had the children do a white oil pastel, and not chalk, but oil pastel, or a white crayon, to go around the contour line, which is the outside line of any shape. And you can see how they kind of went around and pressed really hard, so that when you added the complementary colors, and that's another art element that you can use for this lesson, you know, pick a color for the cat and then choose the complementary color for the background, and you can teach the wet on wet art technique. So I took this lesson and I just expanded it and said, well, you know, what else can we do with this drawing? And I have a free handout that you can download for this little contour cat, and it shows you how to do this project. So definitely do that. And here's the actual handout. And I have a little template too that you can use. And I'll just stick this up here. And let's see. Here we go. If you're like me, it's kind of like I never remember where I put anything. So I had my marker here, but I don't have it now. So that's okay. It's all good. So there's a couple of different options. And I'm going to show you how to teach your kids how to draw this contour cat, because it's kind of funky. I really like it. But there's a couple of little tricks to it. Now here's another option. I just want you to look really close here. Look at this. Just love that. It's a little like sequin or a jewel. If you have those, sometimes I used to stock these in my art room. Sometimes I didn't. But they sometimes they just come in handy for that, just that odd project. It's not something that you plan for, but I did this cat and I'm like, oh, I know, I have that rhinestone. It's going to be perfect for this little cat. So this cat, the focus of this one is not watercolor. This is just the sulfite paper. This is actually cardstock. If you have access to cardstock, colored cardstock, it works really well with markers. Markers can glide right across cardstock because cardstock is super smooth, and it's a great paper for this particular project. So we did the drawing, then we cut the cat out and we glued it to just a regular piece of construction paper. And really, this is not difficult. This would be a really great sub-plan. So if you have, any breaks coming up soon, or if you know you're going to be away, this is a really good lesson to download for a sub because it's super, super easy. Okay, so how to draw that. So in this case, I found my black marker. It was right in front of me. Okay, so in this case, you want a vertical paper. So the pumpkin was horizontal, this one is vertical. And this is what I would do when I was in the classroom. I would mimic the shape of the paper. Children need a border, a container in which to draw within. If I didn't have this paper, they wouldn't have any idea of how big or how small to make their drawing. So that might be something for you to consider if you've never tried that technique before when you're teaching kids how to draw. Draw the paper, just the outline of the paper. It doesn't have to be exact. In fact, it could be blown up really big. You get the idea. Okay, now there's only one trick to this little cat, and it's the very beginning. And some of you might notice it. And the two eyes, I always start with the eyes. I don't know about you. The two eyes are a little bit off center. And the reason why you want to make them off center is because you need room for the tail. So that's the only thing you kind of have to keep in mind. So if I was teaching this to my kids, I'd say mark a little line where you think the middle of the paper is. Just a little tiny dash, just something to show you. You can even fold the paper in half and kind of see where the middle line is. Then draw 2 dots. And of course, a dot is a circle that's colored in. And you want to draw a rainbow over the top of the dots and a smile below. And that's your cat eyes. Now at this point, I never draw these perfect. And I find that I have to always go back and kind of fill in the dot, make them a little bit bigger. Hey, Beth. Beth says, I always had kids that thought they had to draw the rectangle on the paper. That is so interesting. Do you know what that comes from? Just do it over and over again, and it's the repetition. You can tell kids, this is the size of your paper. So it's all about the delivery. Tell them, you already have the paper. You don't have to draw the lines. Really good point, Beth. I love that. Okay, back to the eyes. I like to fill my eyes in just a little bit more because I always leave a little bit of white spot. Then you can draw the little nose. And the kids will notice it's an upside down triangle and a little mouth. Just like that. Then you want to draw a curved line just over the eyes, but not going past the eyes. That's the trick. Then you want to draw the ears. It goes up to that corner, and then you kind of have to do the cheeks and the side of the ears at once. So, in order for you to do the side of the head, you kind of have to know where it's going to end. So, right below the mouth, I make a little neck, and then you can join this line to that line. So it goes like this. It kind of comes down, it has a cheek, and in like that. So it's kind of a wonky line. It's hard to explain to kids. Well, you do this, and then you go in like that. But basically, you just want to say, give them an ear, give them a cheek, give them a little, whatever that is, fur, and then you're done. You got the face. then all you have to do now is draw a really high shoulder, and it comes down, and oh my goodness, he's going to have a small little body. Come across the bottom of the paper, draw another foot, and stop. Then go to the neck, draw a little shoulder, come into the feet, and then have a lot of fun with that tail. Whatever room that you have left over, and this is what I would tell the kids, whatever room you have left over on your paper, fill it up with this really great tail. And come back and try to make the tail as even as possible. And there you go. That's it. Now, after you do this stage, depending on your final outcome, you could have an outcome that looks like this. And if that's the case, you don't have to cut out anything. You could have an outcome that looks like this guy. And if that's the case, you're not going to do anything. You're just going to basically cut out the cat. And I would cut out the cat first before I added any more details. And the reason I would do that is strictly for timing. Sometimes when you're standing in front of a group of kids, you have 40 minutes, you might read a story, you might have some transition, you're going to explain how you're going to do the cat. However much time you have, try to get as far into the process as possible. If you have a few minutes to keep drawing, then keep drawing. So what I would do, look how short and fat he looks. I would add some eyelashes. You don't have to. You could, add a little bit of like a bridge to the nose. You could do some whiskers. And if you were doing the cat that had a lot of the patterns inside, I wonder if I have another one. Hold on for a sec. No, I thought I might have had something. Oh, here's one. Yeah, I knew I showed you something before. This one has a lot of patterns inside, and so you can just get busy drawing the patterns. Here's a little tip with the patterns. One of the core components of learning how to draw is basically connecting line to shape. And a lot of kids, especially kindergarten, first grade, when you tell them to draw patterns or when you show them how to draw a pattern, often they'll just kind of go like this. They'll make scribble lines. Now, one thing that I used to do when I was teaching is really slow down this step and even sit with some children and go, okay, whenever you draw a line, see if you can start on a line and end at another line. So you want to connect them. You don't want any gaps. You don't want the paint to fall through. Whatever kind of analogy I could make up, I would. And I'd have them slow down and really think about the line that they wanted to make and to connect a line to a line. And then I'd say, I'd test them. I go, is this, a line that I want you to draw? And if you can see it, I left a little gap. Or I'll go, is this a line? And they're like, oh no, it's not connected. So then you go, okay, let's connect it. And you can make different shapes and different patterns with your line. Then I would say, is this something I want you to do? And they'd be like, no, that's not it. And then you go, well, you can just fix it. You don't have to erase it. Just go back and see if you can make those lines connect with another line. And that's really the important thing when you're doing any type of, people call them Zentangles or any kind of patterns with kids, little kids. You really want to get them used to connecting the lines, not to leave the line hanging. So you can do whatever you want with that project, and then I just like to cut it out, put it on black paper, which is kind of Halloween-y, I think, and then we use little pom-poms to decorate his little collar. I'm going to show that to you up close, just in case you weren't with me at the beginning. See, isn't that cute? I really like him. So, just like the pumpkin, you can take one guided drawing, a little handout, it could be anything, and transform it into all sorts of different lessons and different projects, just basically switching out the paints, switching out the paper, switching out the mediums, so you can just do really anything. So Francis says, slow down is so important if they're going to process and own the technique. Yeah, you know what, it really is. Slowing down, it's hard to slow down a class. So don't try to control every kid, because it's not going to happen. In fact, it's kind of impossible. And you set up for your own frustration. But you can take one child at a time and maybe you get through 2 or 3 kids in the run of a classroom or like an art session, and you can sit down next to Tiffany and you can, you know, slow her down a little bit, or you can slow, you know, Zachary down a little bit, and they'll remember that. And it's also really fun to kind of sit with them and get to know their style of art, them get to know you. So I just love that slowing down, Frances. You're absolutely right. So I am going to add the link to the pumpkin handout that I promised you. It looks like this, and you can download it from my website. And also, the place that you download this, it gives you kind of a full instructions on how to do that little happy face pumpkin. And then if you want really more of the instructions, if you're a sparkler, a member of the membership program, you have this in the Fall and Farm bundle. So if you haven't downloaded that bundle or unlocked it, it's a really good bundle, especially for this time of year. You can, and this is, you know, full details, all the standards and everything that you're going to need. It's in the Sparklers Club. So I'm going to include this link in the comment section so you can access this. And I'll also make another comment with the link to the contour cat, or that cat that you can draw that I showed you. And that has a drawing handout, a little template. Maybe you can use the template for the little kids, you know, that type of thing. So do you have any questions, anyone? So glad that Frances is here. And Frances says she once told a little girl to go back 3 times to complete her painting, and she finally did fill in all the details. You know, Frances, I have done that too. I've asked, when I stand up at the drawing rack and go, okay kids, you know, if you're done, bring your art to me. And if kids bring their art to me, and I can see that there's, you know, a half a pumpkin that's not painted, the first thing that they're going to say is, you know, like, you're finished, or you can come up with something clever. They're going to go, oh yeah, I'm done. That's the way I want it. And then what my trick would always be is, well, have you thought about using that gold metallic pen or that gold metallic oil pastel to color in this side of the pumpkin? And they'd be like, oh, there's oil pastels over there that are gold, and then run back to the table and use a different product or something. It always would kind of get them a little bit more excited. So use every trick in the book to get kids to slow down. Because oftentimes, especially if you have a really cool free choice project, they're going to want to do that free choice project. But here's the other thing. If you do have kids who are finished, oftentimes we undervalue free choice drawing. Having a box of broken crayons and a stack of recycled paper in front of you. Some of you, do you find that that's sometimes the most often used thing in your classroom? I find that kids need even 3 minutes of that. They are just not allowed to do that during the day. They're so busy. And to sit down and scribble, or to write love notes, or to do whatever, it's such a magical 3 minutes for them. So if they only have 3 minutes, let them do that. I mean, I think that's awesome. So thanks for hanging out with me today. Again, I'll put the links in the comment section. And if you have any questions, you know, I get the notifications, so I'll chime in. And I want you all to have a great time with your kids. And, you know, do these projects with them. Have some fun. Put them on your wall. And, you know, just enjoy this season. And I'll be back doing some more Facebook Live video little tutorials. I kind of like this. I miss it. I get a little more time right now. And so I'm going to do one next week as well. And I think it's going to be a Day of the Dead one. So hopefully same time, same place. You know, let's see if we can do it on Thursdays. Okay, guys, have a good one.